Ladies, gentlemen, welcome back to Black and Blurred.
Hi.
That's Darren.
It's me.
I'm Brandon. All right, guys, we are back with another episode. Now, I told you that we had a busy fall. I gotta remember which one I'm looking at because both of our cameras are in the same place.
Dumb.
I know. We have a busy fall. Busy even outside of podcasting purposes because
I know.
I have a child being born in November.
Yeah. I got a second job.
You did. That's right. You did prep them on that. You did prep them on that. A quick update. To give them a quick update.
Oh yeah, I work at I do Papa John's delivery now.
Right.
The job's a joke.
So quick update for any new listeners who didn't listen to last week on, why are you doing this?
It can provide a little bit more income, but I also have a passion for good customer service.
Right.
And I want people to have better ingredients, better pizza, Papa John's, and good customer service. Like I don't care about pizza, but I do care that people are treated well.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've ordered pizza and I'm like, I can do this and make people happy easily.
Yeah.
This is a no-brainer.
Yeah. How's that working out?
Well, I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
Scale of 1 to 10, what's the work environment quality?
Oh man, yeah, I feel like an undercover boss. Everyone there's this piece of paper that shows everyone's birth date and their ID, their employee ID number. The birth dates start at 2004.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm in there like, wow, man, y'all need parents in here.
Yeah.
Chaotic, no discipline, no work ethic. That's just a common theme, I think, around a lot of places, which is why I want to be in a place where I can infiltrate that a little bit. Maybe help change the culture.
Okay. Well, guys, our last episode was with Dr. Britley LaBeouf, and we talked some things transgender and exercise physiology, which is what her work is in, and just a very obvious biological contradiction transgenderism is and how harmful it is to women and how women lose. If you haven't listened to that episode, go listen to it. But guess what? Brittany wasn't the only classmate of mine from Cross-Examine Instructors Academy in New Mexico with Frank Turek and a host of other people. I think now if you are day one of this podcast, then you know that we have had the original professional party pooper, Marsha Montenegro, on here probably 3 times.
Yeah.
And I remember her second episode, she mentioned how she's always on here whenever Talani's pregnant, my wife. She's like, every time I come on here, your wife is pregnant. So it seems like we got to have her on again.
Yeah, I
know. Since Talani's pregnant. But yes, so we've done Enneagram episodes, and she has dived into the weeds in the very kind of mundane factoids regarding it. And I love Marsha, and I'm grateful for the work that she has done and what she's done on our podcast. But I think I was probably had the most inspiring presentation about the Enneagram in New Mexico from this classmate that we brought on this episode today. And I'm not going to say any more about it.
No,
we're just going to have a nice conversation about it.
You talk too much.
And yeah, I know. But I did find out that not only is it a sister in Christ and a fellow classmate, but then I realized, okay, we can be friends. There's a specific reason. Why? A specific reason. This moment, I came across this video and I said, we can be friends. Listen to this.
You guys, I'm like really smart now. You don't even know. An atheist could be like, Alexa, who created God? And I'd be like, blah, 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 blah. Give me the exact right answer.
That's actually good.
You guys, I'm like really smart now. You don't even know. You could ask me, Kelly, what's the biggest company in the world? And I'd be like, blah, 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 giving you the exact right answer.
Oh, man, my classmate, man. Alexa Kramer, fellow office scholar, PhD in office trivia. Welcome to Black and Blurred.
Wow, thank you. Can't believe you played that.
Yeah.
I'll never forgive you.
Genuinely. So when, so at first when I saw that, I thought that you were doing like the lip sync thing that everybody does with videos and different clips and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And then I realized, wait a second, she mentioned cross-examine and she mentioned her name. That was her doing that. And with the same tone and pitch and inflection. If you don't watch The Office, then you wouldn't get it. But I saw that and I was like, that's
gold.
that's
incredible.
Gold.
Thank you.
That's what we need on TikTok.
Only a few people got it, so
I know. Alexa, tell the people who you are.
Well, I'm just a hot mess mom from Michigan. I have a passion for apologetics. I contribute to Mama Bear Apologetics. I do I write for their blog and just some extra stuff. I help.
Yeah.
Help out. But
you were a classmate of mine at CIA. What was that? Oh, okay. At CIA, and it was very hilarious. You did this thing where I would love for you to just do it real quickly with the magic trick. Do you have cards, or can you at least explain it?
I could explain. I don't have cards with me right here.
Explain it. How you opened it up.
Okay, so I took a deck of cards and I asked the class to think of a card, any card. And was it you that I asked?
Yes.
Which card? Okay. And which I don't remember what card you said.
It was like a King of Diamonds or something like that.
King of Diamonds. And so I asked you, have we met before? Have I influenced you in any way? And then I said, what did I say about the deck? This is a very powerful deck. Watch as your King of Diamonds becomes an Ace of Spades. And the idea was that if you had said Ace of Spades, which is the card that I had on the top, then I would have blown everybody's minds. Yeah. It's been an awesome trick, but because you didn't, I had an out, and I just turned it into a joke.
Yeah. So
win-win situation.
Right. You're going to dive into how that's related to the Enneagram, and people who have been with us for a while are probably like, man, another episode on the Enneagram. But the fact of the matter is, I think that the way Christians have left the conversation has been kind of up in the air, maybe, where it's like, well, I get you might have convictions about it, but it can be redeemed, or that's just not the way I see it, and everything else. And we're gonna, you're gonna address some of those things in its origin and the deception behind some of its most popular promulgators as well, but also address its nonsensical nature. That was probably my favorite part about it. So from the beginning, how did you get connected to the Enneagram? Am I saying that right? I am saying it right. Enneagram, right?
Yeah. Some people say Enneagram. Some people say Enneagram.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I came across it. I was at dinner with a bunch of girlfriends from church, and they were talking about this thing called the Enneagram. And so I pulled out my phone and I took the test right then and there, and I got a number. I got the 6. And it took some time. Like, I was kind of skeptical about it. I looked at the traits and I'm like, maybe not. But I listened to a podcast episode on the number 6, and it I have no idea. Okay. It was a few years ago. I don't remember, but it was a woman was telling her story, like a story in childhood, and this was a story that kind of represented a typical 6, and it was like she was describing me as a kid, and so it completely blew my mind, and I was like, okay, this thing must be legit. And I never got deep into it, but I just kind of thought it was fun.
What were some of the things? What's attributed to a 6?
Fear. And just like walking into a 6, they would say, walk into a room and notice everything that can go wrong. And then you're planning. So if this happens, then a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
But maybe you're both 6s then.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the biggest thing is fear with the 6.
Okay. And so how did you stumble across, what was the beginning of the journey where it's like, is this legit? And then how does this line up with me as a believer? Were you a believer when you dove into it? I mean, what is that journey like?
Yeah, so I've been a believer since as long as I can remember. I grew up in the church, and my faith was genuine since I was little. I've had a relationship with God, but I went through a time, if you know Elisa Childers' story, it's like pretty similar. Just I went through a very severe time of doubt and nearly lost my faith. I was introduced to the Enneagram just before that happened.
Oh, wow.
And so there was a lot going on. And so when I came out of that, the Lord used apologetics to rescue me out of that doubt and kind of rebuild my faith. And in that process, I started learning just how to think better, to think more critically. And I got this sense in me that there was something wrong with the Enneagram. So like a lot of people I knew were really into the Enneagram. I was hearing about it everywhere. I heard that there were people in my church that were using it to like manage the staff. And so, but something wasn't sitting right with me. And so I started I just got online. I'm like, does anybody have anything negative to say about this thing? Like what is this?
Wow. So wait, so you had just an inkling before you even read anything about it. It was just something about it. What was it? Was it the fact that people were latching onto it so closely, or you can't attribute it to anything?
Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, it was they were like, it was like it was forming their worldview, which I don't know if I would have used that word yet at that time, but because it was like every conversation, if you mentioned anybody, that person's number was being incorporated into the conversation. So it was really defining like how they're interpreting everything about something about people. So yeah, it started with this sense that like something is starting to feel off.
And so you dove in and you tried to search for if somebody was talking negative. Who was the first person you came across?
Well, the very first person was Krista Bontrager and Monique Duson.
Oh,
so I found and I didn't know who they were. That's how I found them on YouTube, because there was like a YouTube clip of Krista ranting about it. It's funny because this was a few years ago. So Monique liked the Enneagram at the time. Like if you go back and watch it, she's talking about how, well, I'm an 8 and I think this describes me really well. And Krista's like, but she's like, this doesn't even make sense. Like there's no reason. Yeah. Anyways, it was just funny. But that didn't convince me of anything, but it made me go, that like what Krista's saying makes more sense to me. And then what really got me was Marcia Montenegro on Elisa Childers' podcast. It was the first time I was like, okay, here's some actual information about this thing. And that's where I started looking more into it.
Now, just in general, you said like doubt, and then you were introduced into apologetics, and then apologetics kind of like just bolstered a desire to think well and be logical about, which is like, I guess a pet peeve of mine is that, you found your niche thinking well. That's for you, Alexa. Not for all of us Christians thinking well. Did you experience that a little bit, where just a desire to pause on anything? It doesn't matter. And let's say, hey, I have questions about this. Like, what was that like as you started to kind of implement this desire to think well?
Well, it came from, okay, so looking back on it, I can tell that leading up to my time of doubt, I had this pride that I was completely blind to. So I had I would not have been able to see that for myself, that I had this pride in being open-minded and not needing, there were a couple, luckily, one of the non-negotiables for me in my faith is that Jesus bodily died and rose from the dead, because it's very explicit in scripture. And so that was kind of easy. It felt more black and white to me, but there were other things that that I just started to question. Everything just began to unravel. So, and until a point to then I was like, does God even exist? So I think that the pride had a lot to do with with that experience.
Yeah.
But as far as learning to think well, I think because of the postmodern movement that had influenced me, and I didn't even realize it because I knew what postmodernism was from what I had studied in college, and I thought it was dumb. But it still influenced me, even though I knew what it was. Like it still made me think, well, can we know anything that's true? Can we have any certainty in anything? So what was your original question? I think I went off.
That was actually, you just said something I thought was pretty profound, in that if you could point out postmodernism, you knew what it was, you just weren't aware that it had affected you and that you were now kind of implementing it.
Yeah.
I think about is that 1 Timothy 4, where it just talks about in the last days people are going to turn away from sound doctrine. Paul is saying they're going to last days, and I think Christians, that verse, they know it, and we're just unaware whether or not we're taking part in that. We're taking part in it. But no, you answered that question. So now that you found, you searched and your interest has been piqued, and then Marsha hit you with the water hose, the fire hydrant of information. What were some of the things that stuck out to you the most regarding information regarding the Enneagram? Like, what do you hold on to today? If somebody's like, hey, I'm a this person number, and this is the way I see the world because of the Enneagram, what's the first thing you hit them with?
If I were to confront them about it? Yeah. Well, first I would ask them, why do you trust that this thing works? Why do you trust that you are this one number and you're this number your entire life? Mm-hmm. Like, where does that idea even come from? Mm-hmm. And they'll only be able to say, well, I trust it because the descriptions match me and it makes sense to me. So it's like it's built this rapport with them. And so now that they're going to trust the ideology underneath it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. I don't even know if I asked Marsha this question, but what do you think is the most attractive aspect of the Enneagram to people? What's drawing them?
Well, for one, I think it's just fun to think about yourself and to get all of this self-knowledge and just to like, how am I wired? And like those BuzzFeed quizzes where people take them, just like they're all over the place. It's just kind of like interesting and fun.
Yeah.
And it's got this like, it's got all of these like virtues kind of surrounding it. Like it makes you feel more compassionate and more empathetic, like you understand people. And I think it's just it's like a feel-good self-help tool. It'll feel empowering because now you feel like you understand the world better. You understand people better. And so I think it's a false sense of empowerment. And it also, like the whole thing, which I think our world is kind of obsessed with right now, is to have grace for yourself. Like if you understand why you act the way you do, then you can, just have so much grace for yourself. And yeah. So I think that's.
Oh, I've heard that so much.
Yeah.
Oh, so okay, all right, okay. So we're getting into it. We're getting into it. Sin. So yeah, because sin is not a thing with this, right?
Yeah.
It's just.
Well, it is, but it's redefined.
Okay. All right. So somebody comes to you and they're like, hey, look, you obviously are against science, Alexa. Okay. This is scientific here. They use science to figure me out. and I'm so glad that they use science to figure me out. What do you say to them?
I would say I didn't realize that automatic writing and spirit contact was science.
Oh, so there's definitely some new ears here. You're going to have to flesh that out.
Okay.
You need to flesh that out.
All right. So the Enneagram, a lot of people think it's a personality test, but it's not really a personality test. It's this tool that's supposed to reveal to you your false self. So this idea that you have a false self and a true self. And it was A lot of like Enneagram teachers are going to go out there and say that it's ancient or it has ancient roots. And we know for a fact that that is not true. The original Enneagram was developed in the early 1900s. I say developed, but it was like made up, I should say, by by this man who was just super mystical, and it had nothing to do with personality. And then in the 60s and 70s, there was a man named Oscar. It's either Achazo or Acazo. Anyway, who he somehow learned about the original Enneagram, and he took it and he added to it. And then he added what's called ego fixations. So if you look at the Enneagram, there's 9 points, and each point is assigned you
can keep going.
Okay. Each point is assigned what he would call an ego fixation or like a sin. And then his student, Claudio Naranjo, he added the personality types to each number. But he did this through a practice called automatic writing, which is where you go into a trance and you attempt to summon a spirit to move your hand and write for you. And so he claims in a video that you can watch on YouTube, he claims that that's how he came up with the types, along with observation to confirm the information.
Interesting.
So, and then his mentor, Oscar Chazo, was an occultist and did spirit contact and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Fun stuff. Oh, man. An occultist. Okay. So, okay, we have these mystical guys who are part of the occult. How on earth is this so proliferated in Big Eva Church?
Are you familiar with Richard Rohr?
Oh, unfortunately, yes.
I like to call him the Rohrster. I'm trying to make it a thing.
Yeah. That going for you?
It's going. It's going. I'm getting some traction.
Yeah.
So Richard Rohr is a Franciscan friar, and he's Roman Catholic, but his beliefs are like completely, like very, very heretical, like to the point where he would say that Jesus is separate from the Christ, and that Jesus never asked for worship, that Jesus was just showing us how to find the Christ that's within us.
Yeah.
So he's like very problematic. Well, but a lot of people love his stuff. He just comes across as just like this sweet, spiritual man who has all these nice, compassionate ideas.
Isn't that always the case?
Yeah. So he took the Enneagram and brought it into the church. Really, he's really responsible for that. So if you listen to a Christian Enneagram author or coach, Enneagram coach, they've been heavily influenced by Richard Rohr.
He's very heavy on that, like what did you say, true self, false self stuff? Like, is that his stuff, or is he getting that from other earlier?
So, well, this is another realm of study I actually want to go into. I'm pretty sure he talks about Carl Jung a lot.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so maybe you can tell us more about that, because I have to dive into that. But the shadow self, he mentions the shadow self, which is Carl Jung philosophy. So I think it's influenced. It's like taking this philosophy but he would say, I heard him say in a talk that finding your true self is the sole purpose of religion.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. Finding your true self.
I remember we were talking about this, Darren, because though I had the same inkling as you, now granted, yours was probably stronger than mine. I just never really cared about any personality thing. But I've never seen people react to, I've done a DISC assessment in like a work environment. You familiar with DISC?
A little bit.
Yeah. What are the other ones?
Myers-Briggs.
I almost said, what did I almost say? I almost said, it's the pregnancy thing.
What?
What are the minor contractions called?
Braxton Hicks.
Oh,
What a dummy. Yeah, that's dumb.
yeah.
I can't wait to leave that in.
Oh man, but
Braxton Hicks test. Yes.
That's the Braxton Hicks test. Yeah. But you nailed it, because the things that we were experiencing is every single setting, everything was funneled back into some number or whatever it was, and then that's the way you can see it. Now, what's interesting is that, once research started learning, and you push back on it, one of the comments I would hear is how helpful it can be for my marriage, or how helpful it can be for me to love my neighbor. Jesus said we love our neighbors, and this helps me love my neighbor. Did you come across, or do you come across any of those things when?
Oh
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So it does make you feel more. Are you getting feedback from me? Sorry. It does make you feel more compassionate and empathetic, because you feel like you know why somebody else is doing whatever they do, but it's not based on anything true. So that's, how long is that going to last, for one?
Right.
But the thing with occult practices is that they always, typically, that's how you get hooked into it, is that it kind of works. Like,
Yeah.
So, and then we haven't even talked about the fact that that the enemy is very manipulative.
Mhm.
And so I think he's very happy to allow somebody like to have an area in their life that improves, as long as he can like sow some poison in an area where they're not paying attention.
Right.
So yes, I'm sure that some people find benefits using it, but what's the cost? You don't know the cost all the time.
I forget. Man, I was just talking to someone who was in a rough spot in their marriage, a very, very rough spot. And they had decided to do this process that just wasn't the healthiest. But yeah, I'm just trying to be discreet here. But the process wasn't healthy. However, this is something that could bring peace in the marriage, and things could get better in the marriage. And so as we were talking about that, and, bantering over it, and I was disagreeing and just sharing my insights, and the response was like the enemy is trying to tear apart my marriage. And I'm like, look, there's some reality to that. But I promise you, he's less concerned with your marriage than he is your soul. Now, there was some spiritual issues, like gospel-centered issues, that led to issues in the marriage, but those heart issues still existed, and they could lie dormant as long as they went through this very unhealthy process where, some things on the surface can get fixed and they can go on, and these things aren't addressed in their hearts. And I'm like, bro, you need to deal with that on an individual level, and then realize that. But you just made me think about that when I'm like, yeah, there are some things that we're going to definitely be allowed to be successful at when it comes down to our being deceived.
Right.
We're going to be allowed to be successful at it because there's a deeper desire when it comes down to the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
He wants our rebellion to the living one. That's what he wants. So yeah, sure, you can throw some materials at you. My pushback to people saying, oh, I could love my neighbor well, is I never really actually got that. I mean, I felt like people were still super self-absorbed. Did you at least see some people who became more compassionate and more caring as a result of it?
Oh, I actually saw. Well, I heard. I kind of want to be discreet about this too, but there was a situation where it was like a boss employee situation where there was some toxic behavior that was really explained away because the boss was saying, well, this is her Enneagram number and that she's doing it because of this. And so it allowed for patterns of this toxic behavior that was kind of used as an excuse. Mm-hmm. So they probably felt more compassionate, but then it's like, that's what's so great about the Lord, is that when we're following him,
Yeah.
it's he knows how to do it right with wisdom.
Yeah.
And we don't, unless
Right.
we're trusting his way.
Right.
If we try to do things on our own way, then we mess it up.
Yeah.
We allow toxic behavior because we think that's the right thing to do when we really could just follow the Lord.
Yeah.
Trust him.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole. Yeah, man. It definitely perpetuates allowing toxic behavior. Wow. We make excuses because sin isn't real, I guess. Yeah, you said it's redefined. So how has it been redefined in this worldview?
Ooh, can I have a quote some here.
Yeah, let's get some quote.
I can find it. Yes. Okay. So, on Beth and Jeff McCord's website, they have the website Your Enneagram Coach.
Mhm.
So they are coming to the Enneagram with a Christian perspective. On their website, they talk about sin, and they say, we've fallen from our original union with God. The result is the development of coping mechanisms such as idolatry, and in parentheses it says God substitutes, or legalism, in parentheses good moral behavior.
Good grief.
What?
Good moral behavior, she and Beth and Jeff McCord are defining as legalism. So that's not what legalism means.
Wow.
And then in The Road Back to You, the authors quote Richard Rohr, the Rohrster, and they say, Richard Rohr writes, sins are fixations that prevent the energy of life, God's love, from flowing freely. They are self-erected blockades that cut us off from God and hence from our own authentic potential.
Goodness gracious.
This might not line up at all, but this is the picture I just got. It's something that used to frustrate both of us. It still does. You think about it's Blade. You know where I'm going with this.
Oh boy.
This movie Blade, old vampire movie.
That's every vampire movie.
Yeah, but vampire movies, you got the bad vampires, right? And then whenever they are out in the sun or they die, it's this horrific death and it's terrible. But then you have the vampire like in the sequel or something like that, and they become a little bit nicer. and so in order for us to, get closer and closer to this evil blood-sucking demon, that even their death is portrayed as nicer. So they go out into the sun and they just kind of and then disappear and bathe away. Why isn't their death so horrible?
Yeah,
I mean,
they turn into fog and just
they turn into fog and just dissipate.
Yeah.
It's like, nah, man, you're a vampire.
Right.
You would die the same way. You get up out of here. Get up out of here. But that's what that sounds like. It's like you're describing sin. How can you describe it with beauty? Beauty is objective. We've gone through this. Like, it's objective. You can't describe sin with beauty. That's disgusting.
Yeah.
The Rohrster. Okay. Now I want to pull a picture up because when I remember when things were getting, I don't know, just ramping up with Enneagram this, Enneagram that. And then there was the feuding, and it's like, hey, this is the Enneagram. And then our minds had already been made up because we did some research and we read on it and things like that. But then I was introduced to a whole new segment of the Enneagram, which is connected to your joke and card thing that you said at the beginning, where I thought that it was just a number. Like, hey, you behave this way, you get a number. And then I pulled up some charts and it's like numbers on tops of numbers on top of numbers. Like, can you explain that to us for a second? Like, what in the world is this?
Okay. See the arrows?
Yeah.
So you never have to worry if you are starting to relate to other numbers on the chart, because that doesn't mean that the Enneagram is wrong, okay? Because you relate to lots of numbers on the chart. So you look at your number. So I don't know, let's pick one. Pick a number, any number.
9.
Okay, a 9. So a 9 is going to go to, you have a path of stress and a path of growth. So your goal is to be in a path of growth. So as a 9, you want to start exhibiting the healthy traits of the 3. because that's where your arrow is pointing to.
Pointing,
But if
okay.
you find yourself exhibiting the traits of a 6, that means that you're on your path of stress and you need to correct. Okay.
It would take me to a 3.
So you are a 9, but
Mhm.
sometimes you look like a 3, sometimes you look like a 6, and then you have wing numbers. So a 9 has the wings 8 and a 1. And so you might, have a dominant wing. So you would either be a 9 wing 8 or a 9 wing 1. Typically, of course, they always leave that open, like, maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah, as a 9, you're really a 9, an 8, a 1, a 6, and a 3.
Oh my
That's
God. So, okay.
garbage.
So bring that full circle. How does that apply
You're 1 through 9.
to the magic trick where I told you to give me a king of whatever, diamonds or something?
And then I turned that, because I got it wrong, I just turned it into a joke and made sure that, like, I won anyways. Like, I pretended like I did that on purpose, right? Well, it was a plan. It was pre-planned. So I did do it on purpose. So you can't get it wrong on the Enneagram, because, I mean, first of all, the 9 traits, like, scientifically, they don't type people accurately. So, like, the traits kind of overlap. So especially because of that, now if you can relate to 5 traits out of the 9, you're basically always able to find yourself somewhere on the Enneagram.
Yeah. So you can be all things to all people. How biblical of them. So what is this here? So
Okay.
type in the perfectionist.
So this is just an example of the type 1. So there's another tactic. So what I did for our presentation, and I used this a little bit in the Mama Bear apologetics articles that I had written. I had come across this book called The Full Facts Book of Cold Reading. If you can see that.
Okay.
And this book exposes tactics that that psychic readers will do. To manipulate people into buying what they're telling them. And I was flipping through this book, and I was like, oh my goodness, I can find a lot of these, like, that they're used in the Enneagram. It just really opened my eyes to all these different tactics that make it seem like it works. Wow. And so one of these things is called the rainbow ruse. Okay. And the rainbow ruse is it's just a tactic that somebody who's trying to deceive someone. So, like, a psychic is an example, but they'll give you a statement, and in that statement, they'll attribute 2 opposite traits to you, and it feels like they're covering all possibilities, but when you hear it, it feels very insightful to you. So there's like an example. I had it written down if I can find it. It's like if you were to say you are a kind person, compassionate person, but you have a selfish streak in you as well, don't you? They have more clever ways of saying that, but they basically say you're compassionate and you're selfish, and everybody can relate to that.
Everybody.
But if you're listening, like, to this person, you might think, oh my gosh, they nailed it. That's exactly me. That makes total sense. And so, and in the Enneagram, if you look at the traits, this is an example. A type 1, because it's relating to all these other numbers, a type 1 is going to sometimes look like a healthy 7. And one of the traits is self-accepting. Sometimes they'll look like an unhealthy 4, and one of the traits is self-pity. So self-accepting and self-pity. We're covering all possibilities here. Yeah. So you're at any given point in time, you're gonna fit one of those. And then the wing traits, one wing is empathetic and the other wing is detached. It's another spectrum here. You can fit anywhere on the spectrum. This kind of thing is like, it's all over the Enneagram.
Wow.
So you've got outs, you've got the rainbow ruse. There's a lot of other tactics too.
Yeah. And so at the end of the day, none of this makes sense. At the end of the day, this just isn't real.
It's your own brain that's filling in all the information. So it's makes sense to you because a lot of the statements are very generic. They would apply to a lot of people, but your brain is filling in memories and experiences and all this stuff. You don't realize that you're adding meaning to words, the general words. And so, yeah, it's like, it's not really saying anything.
Because the main pushback has been kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Discretion, right? Where it's like, oh, well, Alexa, maybe that's just your convictions as a Christian. Look, I'm a Christian too. And I just, I have the freedom in this. I feel like, Jesus has redeemed a lot of things and I just have the freedom in it. And like, based on what you're just saying is like, I don't really need to even get into that conversation, which we should as believers, but I can just say, hey, this is fake.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Like people don't like to be manipulated. Like when they find out that, like, when that's exposed, I think that would be a very good strategy for us to show, like, expose the manipulation, the control that's happening to people by buying into this stuff.
Right.
Because they might not care. That's a way to help them care.
Yeah.
About it.
I would I remember the movie The Shack coming out. Have you seen this?
I know about it, but I never watched it, actually.
Yeah. I only watched it prescriptively because a lot of people were watching it. And I needed to know what it was. And I only wanted to watch it because people were talking about it so much. And I mean, I looked like you when we did a cringe. You have to go on Patreon to watch Alexa cringe at our cringe videos. But I looked like you watching the cringe videos the whole time watching this movie.
Oh, no.
And I'm thinking, this is so dumb. This is so wrong. But, because they have they show the triune nature of God. One of them is, was it Della Reese? I don't know.
My goodness.
But it was a big old fat black woman named Papa. That's her name.
Oh wow.
What? Papa?
Yeah, Papa. And then the Holy Spirit was this other woman. And Jesus was a Middle Eastern man. I mean, they got that part right. But yeah, and then everything else was very Rohrster-esque.
Mm.
And I'm like, how are people eating this stuff up? And I think it's because, ignorance, right? And in the same way, I think it's ignorance that people can eat this stuff up with the Enneagram and be told this, anything that they are told and eat it up about themselves. What do you think people need to grow in as far as knowledge in order to combat things like the Enneagram? Do they need to grow in the knowledge about the occult and the history of the occult, or is there probably a more general aspect of thinking they probably need to grow in?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is getting to know the Trinity and the persons of the Trinity, because I think what happens with the Enneagram is it becomes a Holy Spirit replacement. But if you don't really, like, that wasn't part of my training as a kid. Like, I just did a in-depth study on the Trinity like last year and I'm like, why didn't I know all of this? Like that there's so much to learn just by looking at the scriptures of each person of the Trinity and what their role is and what the Holy Spirit does for you and how clear it is. It's right there. It's all over. So I think that that's something that needs to be more clear. But people need to really, part of it is, yes, we have a biblical illiteracy problem in the church. I think that's a big problem. But like on top of that is this idea that if you're too certain about your theology, or you hold it too tightly or too strong about it, too firm in your beliefs, that makes you arrogant.
Right.
And so hold your beliefs lightly and, just err on the side of love. That's kind of like the message, the popular message right now. And so that needs to be addressed in order to help people see that the theology part and the knowing your Bible, knowing your scripture is so important. Because they're not going to get there until they realize that this other thing isn't right. That's just another manipulative tactic by the enemy. If he can get you to think that it's arrogant to study and have any kind of certainty with who God is and what he says, if he can get you to feel like that's arrogant, he's won the battle there.
Did you see any of the, I mean, it was everywhere, sermon series and couples, dating things. These are all churches,
like icebreakers.
Youth
group icebreakers, all types of
all
stuff.
in a church context. I don't even know what my question is about that. I'm just like, what are your thoughts about these things where people are doing sermon series on numbers?
Yeah.
And I don't mean the biblical book numbers. I mean
I wish that's what you meant.
Enneagram numbers, man.
I don't even know what to say. Yes, they're doing it. Yeah. I watched some.
I mean, what do you say to that?
As if the Bible hits differently for different people with different numbers. Like you need to hear a different message because you're a 4.
Right. I mean, look, this is Black and Blurred podcast. I think that the precursor to that
horoscopes, right?
No, but no, I'm talking about specifically what Alexa just said as far as the Bible hitting differently for people. There's a scholar named Esau Macaulay who wrote a book called Reading While Black. Now I haven't finished that book, but the premise, the title, and I'm not attributing this to the entire book, but I think that there is a premise out there that book draws from that says that, hey, we do need to back up when it comes down to the Bible and the way that we look at it, because you look at it through black eyes and it's different and everything else. Like, bro, what are we talking about? I mean, we're talking about things from multiple millennia ago, and then you get to Second Temple period, and then you get to first century. Ain't none of us from that time.
Right. Right. We're all looking at a perspective of people we didn't know.
Right. I mean, yeah. So that definitely makes sense that would also get to the Enneagram, because if you're a 6 and you're always afraid, Alexa, so I can't talk about fear of the Lord with you, because it'll be different. It'll be different. Can't be so afraid. Are there any things that you are working on now? You said you're a contributor to Mama Bear Apologetics. I'm sure a lot of people who listen to us are familiar with Mama Bear Apologetics and Hillary Morgan Ferrer. Are there any things you're still doing with them right now?
We just posted an article on AI, and it's a 2-parter, so that one's fun.
Man.
But yeah, I'm always working on stuff. My next area of study is going to be in yoga.
Ooh.
So I'm going to start looking into that and researching.
Oh boy,
just some exercise.
I know. Well, guess what? See you soon. Tune in next time on Black and Blurred. But yeah, we're going to have you on for that. We're going to have you on for that, because that's another one. I'm not going to dive deep into it, but you can't talk about it. Deep into it right
now.
I'm not about to. Yes, I'm just saying.
You can't stop.
All you got to do is let's just go down history. And
you just ask some questions.
Yeah, just ask some questions. But like you said, people don't like being manipulated. And I think you go that route where it's like, hey, this place, even though there's a Starbucks there and there's a 7-Eleven here, people are still doing Hindu worship across the street. That's fine. But yeah. Okay. This is the last question, and because you brought it up, you don't dive deep. You just have to give us 30 seconds. What are your thoughts on AI? Easy question, simple question.
It's demonic. Stay away. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. I think that it's going to exacerbate the problem of knowing what the truth is, because there's so much content. It's just going to get better and better. So images, video, text, all of it. it's going to be hard to know what's true. And so what we were talking about is be preparing your children for how to think critically, to know that truth always exists no matter what. Like we can know that there is objective truth. But we kind of talk about like start preparing your kids to be able to discern between everything that they come across. Basically,
Right.
we have to be discerning.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, guys, you can find Alexa's work on Mama Bear Apologetics, and you also on a number of podcasts. I think you were recently on Heaven and Health with Brittany LaBeouf, right?
Yep.
And where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, you can go to alexacramer.com. And my Instagram's private. But you can find me on Facebook.
Okay.
Kramer.
Okay. All right. Well, Alexa, it was a pleasure having you join us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Watching you cringe on that video. But thank you. Thank you for shining light. Thank you for shining light into this. And also God bless into the work on doing yoga and continuing on with the AI stuff. And thank you also for contributing to the Mama Bear Apologetics and just the nurturing of the children of tomorrow. Like that's extremely important. And then also the parents, nurturing those parents, nurture the children of tomorrow. Thank you all of you who contribute to that.